let's talk about anxiety and neurofeedback. I'd say that anxiety is huge. There are so many people that are anxious, so many people that are worried, scared, nervousness. I think there's a lot of causes for this, really, and this sounds out there, but I really kind of believe it. In my short life, my 30 years of 30 years of therapy, being a therapist, 50 plus years of being a human being, it seems that anxiety is increased, and it seems that we have more gut issues. People really have food sensitivities. What's the cause of that? Who knows? But I do think it's interesting that there's the gluten sensitivity issue. One has to ask, well, why are we gluten sensitive now? Like, what's in gluten now that all of a sudden we have a whole generation of people sick with it, where in 1940s, it could be that the pesticides in the wheat are what's causing the gut to have problems, because the pesticide not only is it good at killing the pests that would attack wheat, but it also would kill the bacteria, the healthy biome in your gut. It's killing that. And so you just can't digest your food properly. It's an interesting thought. The Academy of Naval Sciences did a study with treating anxiety with probiotics alone. That's fascinating. And how many of us really get nervous around our gut when we are stressed and anxious? And how many of us have irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, etc. This is kind of a gross thing to talk about, but they even took the feces out of nervous rats. Yeah, rat psychology, and put that feces in the gut of the intestinal system of the healthy rats, and those rats started getting nervous. My joke is, well, who wouldn't get nervous just from the procedure? But I do think that that's interesting, that some of our nervous anxiety, lack of sleep, could be just from diet, nutrition. So it's something to consider. It's maybe a small factor, but maybe we wash our food too well. We might have gotten I'm not saying let's not wash food, but if the food might have had traces of dirt, which would have had healthy organisms. And again, if we've pesticided the food so much, nothing's growing on it. So that's why a lot of people are benefiting from yogurt and kefir and types of fermented foods, pickles and stuff, and sauerkraut and kimchi. We don't really eat those as much as we did. Why? Because we invented refrigerators. And before refrigerators, people just had only so much storage for food in a little tiny ice box, and so a lot of it probably was fermented and preserved that way. So back to other causes of anxiety. I think we're not really sleeping like we ever did. I think we're sleeping maybe 1 to 2 hours shorter than we did in the past, and our body just needs to sleep. Perhaps it's cell phones that we have so connected with that we get a lot of distraction and inattentiveness, because in the old days, now I'm using the words like old days, but I would have gone through my life, had a conversation, and yes, the corded phone might have interrupted me, but it didn't ring all the time, and I had a choice to answer it or not. And I could only answer it when I was in the room. But if I left the room to the bathroom or to drive or to go home or somewhere, it wasn't ringing. So what happened? We now had the cell phone with us 24 hours a day, it can ring or ding or beep or notify us all the time. Not only will it be a phone call, which are really not that often, but it's a text from someone, well-meaning, but maybe they're texting about something that's not the most important, or it is really important, so we're never really sure how emergent something is. In the more recent older days, there was something called a pager. I had one, and when that beeped, it was for emergencies. It was more for those urgent needs, and we kind of dropped everything. That's actually interestingly gone away. And so now we see a notification, we have to go look at it to see if it's urgent or not. I suppose if we're tech savvy, then we're able to notify in a way that sounds more urgent or not. But now we're being notified that our favorite department store is offering us 20% off on our next purchase, or something happened in the government where someone's lying or doing something corrupt, or the economy is not doing so well, or even your own personal economy isn't doing well because you just got a notification from the bank that you are now down to $5.62. So we may just be inundated with too much information. That I don't think we had this many interruptions 20, 30 years ago. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm just saying it's like in a chapter book, say like there's 20 chapters, okay? In a day, maybe there were 5 chapters of things I had to do, and there were interruptions and stuff. Now, because of technology, I can have probably 47 different things to think about because of the cell phone, whether it's a family member or the school district wanting something, or the bill to be paid, or something wonderful is happening at church, or I'm getting a 20% off coupon, or the rain is going to be happening because my weather app told me this, or the pollen count is such that it is, oh, that's right, I have the cat to take to the vet. See, it just goes on, and I just wonder if that isn't somehow frying our brains. Well, there I said it. How negative is that? I think there's an answer. I bring this up only to, I'm not going to get rid of technology in my life. I just want to use it more wisely. And the reality is, what good is all this if our brains are fried and our nervous system is so nerve-wracking that we can't sleep? And so blue screen on devices, blue screens blue light hits our eyeballs, and our eyeballs have different sensors. Blue light wakes us up. Amber light keeps us kind of asleep. And if we were to look at a sunrise without any correction from our brain, because our brain actually corrects this. If you ever take old-time photography, just take a picture, it'll look very blue. And in the evening, a sunset looks very red. The cameras and our eyes connected to our brains correct for that. Like this light has bluish light or greenish light, fluorescent. Usually it would be much more green. So it's important. Blue light is waking us up. It keeps us from producing melatonin. So at night we should probably 3 to 4 hours before we go to bed. Another thing we could do is try to avoid eating. Second of all, stay away from bluish light because it's just too much stimulation, and then we don't sleep the same. They have had studies they were doing on hormone levels, and when the lights went out in a dense, incidentally, like a brownout in the community, they were doing this, it affected the results of the study. People actually felt so much better. What happened? They slept more. They were doing things by candlelight. See, one has to realize it's a relatively new invention, electricity, in terms of mankind. And so maybe 150 years ago, they might have had that. But prior to that, it was candlelight. So you did what you could during the day and you went to bed with the night. So all these factors are important. I think the stress of electromagnetic frequencies, you may think I'm crazy, but I do think that we just have a lot more electrical stuff going on. More phone lines, more fax lines, more optic cable, all this stuff is just surrounding us. And why do we feel so much more relaxed out in a state or a field where there's just not a lot of these frequencies? So there is a solution. I invite each of you to even comment. I'd be curious about what you found out about this in your own life, of what you can do to lower stress and anxiety.